The galaxy was a vast and mysterious place, full of unimaginable dangers. But Earth, a small blue planet, had always managed to stay hidden in the shadows of the universe. It was peaceful, unaware of the incredible forces watching it from the stars. That was until the Galactic Empire turned its eyes toward Earth. For years, the Empire had been silently preparing. The vast, unstoppable fleet was just waiting for the right moment to strike. But Earth's defenders didn't know this. They were living their daily lives, not realizing that an ancient, all-powerful empire was about to bring them to the edge of destruction. On Earth, Captain Alex Rains stood alone in the quiet of his command room. Outside, the world was peaceful. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the horizon. Everything seemed calm, almost like a perfect evening. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound. Yet for Alex, peace felt like a lie. He had seen the signs, the small clues that the Empire was getting closer. His mind raced as he thought about the reports that had come in earlier that day. The Empire was building something massive, something powerful enough to wipe out entire cities with a single shot. Every piece of information was troubling, but Alex had learned to trust his instincts. He knew something big was coming. He walked over to the console and looked at the map of the Earth's defenses. The planet's military was still a few steps behind in terms of technology compared to the Empire. The Empire had ships the size of mountains and weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Earth's forces were small, disorganized, and under-equipped. But there was one thing they had that the Empire did not: human will. The will to survive. Alex wasn't the kind of man who let fear control him. He had seen countless battles, survived impossible situations, and led soldiers through some of the darkest times. But even he couldn't ignore the feeling that something terrible was about to unfold. As he stood there, gazing at the stars outside the window, he couldn't help but wonder, would humanity survive this storm? Just then, the door slid open. Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, Alex's second-in-command, stepped inside. She didn't look scared, but her eyes betrayed a sense of urgency. "Captain, we've got a new report," she said, her voice steady but tense. Alex turned to face her, his expression calm, but his heart beat faster. "What's the news?" "It's worse than we thought," Sarah said, tapping a few commands on her wristpad. A hologram flickered to life in the air, showing a map of the galaxy. Earth was a tiny dot in the vastness of space. But there, surrounding it, were countless fleets, ships of every size and shape, all headed in their direction. "Empire forces?" Alex asked, narrowing his eyes. The sight was not surprising, but it sent a chill down his spine. "Not just Empire forces, sir," Sarah continued, her face pale. "It's an invasion, a full-scale attack. They're moving into Earth's orbit right now." Alex stepped closer to the hologram, studying the ships as they drew nearer. The Empire's fleet was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Large, intimidating, and cold, the ships seemed to stretch on forever. Each ship was a fortress of advanced technology and deadly weapons. They could destroy entire cities before the people even had a chance to fight back. But Earth had always been underestimated. For years, the Empire thought Earth was too insignificant to notice, too small to be worth their attention. But they had made one huge mistake. They didn't understand what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. "Get everyone to their posts," Alex said, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. "Prepare for impact. The Empire's here." The tension in the room was palpable as Sarah nodded and rushed to relay the orders. Alex stood still for a moment, his thoughts racing. He knew that Earth's forces were not ready for this battle. The Empire's ships were far beyond anything humanity had, and the weapon they had developed could erase an entire city with a single blast. But Alex had one thing on his side: his team. He trusted them more than anyone. They were the best soldiers humanity had. They had faced impossible odds before, and every time, they had come through. They had done the impossible. But now, The odds were worse than ever. The Empire was a force unlike anything humanity had ever faced. Alex knew this battle wouldn't just be about weapons. It would be about survival. It would be about fighting for the future of the human race. He turned his gaze back to the stars. The peaceful night he had once known was gone. In its place was a storm of unimaginable power, and he was at the center of it. Alex took a deep breath, his mind made up. Earth had one chance to fight back. He would lead his team, no matter the cost. If the Empire wanted Earth, they would have to fight every inch of it. The storm was coming, and Captain Alex Rains would be ready. The Galactic Empire's fleet descended into Earth's atmosphere like a dark shadow, blocking out the sun and casting an ominous pall over the planet. Cities across the world began to panic as emergency sirens blared, signaling the arrival of an invincible force. Alex Rains stood at the command center, his eyes glued to the holographic display in front of him, which showed the incoming fleet. His pulse quickened as the image grew larger, the sheer size of the Imperial ships overwhelming. He had always known this day might come, but seeing it in front of him, knowing that Earth's survival depended on him and his team, was more terrifying than anything he had faced before. He took a deep breath and turned to Sarah, his trusted lieutenant, who stood by his side, her face grim but determined. "We don't have much time," Alex said, his voice steady but his mind racing. He quickly issued commands to his squad, preparing them for the fight of their lives. There was no room for hesitation, no chance to second-guess. The Empire's forces were already in motion, and their first strike was coming fast. Alex's team had trained for years, but nothing could truly prepare them for an invasion of this scale. They were Earth's last line of defense, and it was up to them to hold back the tide. The first wave of Imperial soldiers arrived on Earth's surface within hours, their landing craft tearing through the sky and crashing into the ground with a deafening roar. The ground shook beneath Alex's feet as the Empire's massive war machines deployed on Earth's soil. Earth's soldiers fought valiantly, but it was clear that they were outmatched. The Empire's weapons were far more advanced, and their elite soldiers seemed unstoppable. Alex watched as the first few battles were lost, one after another. Human resistance was fierce, but it wasn't enough. The Empire's onslaught was too powerful, too overwhelming. As Alex and his team moved through the chaos, coordinating the defense, a message came through on his comm unit. It was a signal from Earth's leaders. "We've just received intel," the voice said, breathless. "The Empire has deployed its most dangerous weapon, an energy cannon capable of leveling entire cities. They've already targeted our capital." Alex's heart sank. The energy cannon was the Empire's ultimate weapon, a massive orbital cannon capable of destroying entire regions with a single blast. If it hit Earth's major cities, humanity wouldn't stand a chance. He knew that they had to stop it, no matter the cost. His team was already stretched thin, fighting off waves of soldiers, but the energy cannon could wipe out everything they had worked for. It was clear that Earth's survival depended on this one mission. The Empire was ruthless, and they would stop at nothing to wipe humanity from the galaxy. "Sarah," Alex said, his voice sharp, "gather the team. We're going after that cannon. If we don't stop it now, there won't be an Earth left to save." He didn't wait for a response. He knew Sarah would be right there beside him, as always. She was a fighter, just like him, and Earth's survival meant more to her than anything. The battle raged on around them as they fought their way toward the Empire's command center. Every step felt like an eternity as they dodged laser fire and dealt with constant ambushes. The Empire's soldiers were everywhere, their movements coordinated and precise. But Alex and his team fought back with everything they had. They used the terrain to their advantage, hiding behind ruined buildings and wrecked vehicles, picking off enemies with sniper precision. But as the day wore on, Alex felt a growing sense of dread. The Empire was relentless. Every time they took down a squad of soldiers, another one would appear in their place. They had no end. The Empire had conquered countless worlds, and now it was Earth's turn to feel their wrath. By the time they reached the Imperial Command Center, Alex was exhausted, his body battered and bruised. The weight of what they were about to face hung heavy on his shoulders. But he had no choice. If he failed, everything they had fought for, everything they had hoped for, would be lost. The command center loomed ahead, a massive structure surrounded by heavy security. Alex could feel the tension in the air, the quiet before the storm. This was the moment that would decide the fate of humanity. They had come this far, but the real fight was just beginning. "Ready?" Sarah asked, her voice calm, though her eyes revealed the fear she was trying to hide. Alex nodded. This was it. There was no turning back now. They infiltrated the command center with precision, taking down guards silently and moving deeper into the heart of the Empire's operation. Alex knew that every second they spent inside was a risk, but they had no choice. The Empire's weapon had to be stopped, and the clock was ticking. As they neared the heart of the facility, the sounds of combat grew louder. Alex could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Every step brought them closer to the energy cannon, and every step was more dangerous than the last. They had to make it to the control room and disable the cannon's power systems before it was too late. But as they entered the final corridor, the door slid open. And before them stood the Empire's most dangerous general, a towering figure in black armor. His cold eyes locked onto Alex's, and for a moment, everything stood still. Alex took a deep breath. This was it. The final battle had begun. The heavy door to the control room hissed open, and Alex Rains led his team inside, weapons drawn and ready. The atmosphere in the room was charged with tension, the quiet before the storm that would decide the fate of Earth. As they entered, the sound of distant explosions echoed through the hallways, shaking the walls. The Empire's forces were relentless, but so were Earth's defenders. Every inch of ground was being fought for, but Alex knew the battle inside this room was different. It would determine whether humanity lived or died. The control room was stark, cold, and unforgiving, just like the Empire itself. Rows of machines lined the walls, their screens glowing with an eerie green light. At the far end of the room, the energy cannon's control panel stood, surrounded by armed Imperial guards who were clearly prepared for anything. They looked at Alex's team with cold, calculating eyes. There was no room for mercy in the Empire. Every human life was expendable to them. Alex could see the tension in his team's faces, the same feeling that had settled in his gut. They had come this far, but the hardest part of the mission was just beginning. "Take them out quickly and quietly," Alex whispered to his team, his voice low but sharp. He motioned for Sarah to take the left side of the room, while he and the rest of the squad would cover the right. The plan was simple: disable the cannon, get out, and live to fight another day. It wasn't a perfect plan, but in a battle like this, there was no such thing as perfect. It was all about survival. They moved swiftly, making their way toward the guards. The Empire's soldiers stood with their backs to them, unaware of the threat that was about to strike. Alex's team was trained for moments like this. Each movement was silent, precise, and deadly. In the blink of an eye, the first two guards were taken out, their bodies crumpling to the ground without a sound. But as Alex scanned the room, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The control panel for the cannon was already armed. The countdown had begun. "They've already started it," Sarah said, her voice filled with urgency as she crouched next to Alex. "We don't have much time." Alex gritted his teeth. The Empire had no intention of giving Earth any time to prepare for their ultimate weapon. If the cannon fired, Earth's largest cities would be reduced to rubble in a matter of seconds. The countdown was ticking down fast, and with each passing second, the pressure grew. "We need to hurry," Alex barked. He signaled for the rest of his team to move forward. They reached the control panel, but as Sarah began working to disable the cannon, the rest of the squad took up defensive positions. They knew the Empire wouldn't let them disable the weapon without a fight. Seconds felt like hours as Sarah worked her magic, fingers flying over the control panel's keys. Sweat dripped down her forehead, but she didn't stop. Alex's eyes darted between Sarah and the entrance to the room. He could feel the heat of the Empire's forces closing in. He knew they didn't have much time before reinforcements would arrive, but Sarah was close. He could feel it. Then, just as Alex was about to tell her to hurry, the door to the control room slammed open with a deafening crash. The sound of heavy boots echoed as the Empire's reinforcements stormed in. The team of elite soldiers, wearing black armor and carrying powerful energy rifles, moved into the room with lightning speed. "Get away from that panel," one of them yelled, his voice cold and commanding. Alex and his team immediately took cover behind the walls, returning fire as the first shots rang out. The blinding flash of energy bolts lit up the room, but Alex and his team were quick to respond. They fired back, their weapons making the walls tremble with each shot. The battle inside the room was intense, but Alex's focus never wavered. Sarah was still at the panel, trying to hack into the cannon's control system and shut it down. Alex knew they couldn't hold out much longer. The Empire's reinforcements were pouring in faster than they could handle, and the energy cannon's countdown continued to tick down. Every shot they fired, every second that passed, brought them closer to disaster. "Sarah, we need that cannon offline now," Alex shouted, his voice strained with urgency. "I'm almost there," she responded, her voice tight. "Just a few more seconds." The sound of the Empire's soldiers was deafening, but amidst the chaos, Sarah's fingers continued to fly over the control panel. Alex's squad fought fiercely, holding the line, but it was clear that time was running out. His heart raced as he saw the countdown reach its final seconds. Every fiber of his being screamed that they wouldn't make it in time. Then, with one final command, Sarah slammed her fist on the control panel, and the countdown halted. For a moment, there was silence. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They had done it. The cannon was deactivated. But as Alex turned to look at his team, relief quickly turned to dread. The door to the control room burst open once again, this time with even more soldiers. This was it. No more time to escape, no more time to plan. It was time to face the Empire head-on. "Prepare for the final stand," Alex said through gritted teeth. The battle wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The room was alive with chaos, the sound of energy blasts, clattering metal, and soldiers shouting orders. Alex could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him like 1,000 tons of pressure. They had disarmed the cannon, yes, but it wasn't enough. The Empire was not going to let them walk out of this control room alive. It was clear now. They had to finish this or die trying. Alex glanced over at Sarah, who was still crouched next to the control panel. Her fingers were trembling as she worked quickly to lock down the system, but the fear was evident in her eyes. The countdown had been stopped, but if they didn't secure the control room, the cannon could be restarted. Or worse, someone else might take control of it and finish the job. "Sarah, we need to go," Alex said, his voice low but urgent. "Now." She didn't look up, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I can't leave it like this. The cannon's offline for now, but if we leave without securing the system—" "I know," Alex interrupted, "but we don't have time. We're surrounded, and if we stay here, we're all dead. We fight our way out. You can't stop them all on your own, and we can't risk them reactivating the cannon. We need to move." Sarah hesitated, her fingers pausing on the keyboard. The seconds were ticking by, and she knew Alex was right. There was no time left. Reluctantly, she slammed her hand on the panel, locking it down as best she could, before rising to her feet. "All right, let's do this." With no more words needed, Alex signaled to his team, and they moved into action. They knew what was at stake, and there was no more room for hesitation. The Empire's reinforcements were already pouring into the room from the main entrance. Every second counted. They didn't have much time before they would be completely overrun. Alex's team quickly set up a defensive perimeter, using the scattered debris for cover as they prepared for the inevitable onslaught. Outside the control room, the sounds of marching boots grew louder, signaling that more troops were closing in. Then, the door slammed open. The first wave of Imperial soldiers rushed in, their weapons drawn and aimed straight for the team. Alex and his soldiers reacted with lightning speed, their training kicking in. They fired back with ruthless precision, each shot taking down an enemy soldier before they could even react. The firefight was intense. The air was thick with the smell of burning ozone and the crackle of energy weapons. Yet even as Alex and his team fought for their lives, he couldn't shake the feeling that the odds were stacked against them. They were fighting for survival, but they were still vastly outnumbered. "Sarah, get to the rear," Alex shouted, making sure she was out of harm's way while he and the rest of the squad held the front. Sarah, still processing the intensity of the battle, nodded and sprinted to the far side of the room. Her role was to provide support from the back, using her expertise with computers and systems to lock down doors and set traps, anything to slow down the Empire's forces. But there was no safe place anymore. More troops poured into the room. Alex's team fought hard, moving with deadly efficiency, but they were beginning to tire. The Empire's soldiers were relentless, and there were too many of them. Alex could hear the sound of reinforcements rushing to the scene, their footsteps growing louder. Each second was bringing more danger, and with every minute they stayed, the chances of survival grew slimmer. "Retreat," Alex yelled, his voice cutting through the noise of the battle. "We're falling back to the secondary exit. Move." With little choice but to obey, the team began to withdraw, keeping up a steady stream of fire to cover their retreat. It wasn't easy. Every step felt like it took everything they had left. The Empire's forces pressed forward, but Alex and his team were skilled. They knew how to fight, how to survive, and how to make their last stand count. As they made their way toward the secondary exit, Alex kept his eyes on the rear view. Sarah was still behind him, pulling up the last of the data and locking down the door behind them. They couldn't afford to leave any gaps, any weaknesses in their escape. If the Empire was going to catch up with them, they needed every advantage they could get. Finally, after what felt like hours of back-and-forth firefights, they reached the exit. But just as they reached the door, a loud explosion rocked the building, sending a wave of heat and debris flying through the corridor. Alex was knocked off his feet, his vision blurred as he struggled to stand. The explosion had knocked out the power to their escape route. The door wouldn't open. "Get up," Sarah shouted, pulling Alex to his feet. "This way." They weren't alone. The Empire was already closing in on them. Alex's breath was heavy. His mind raced. There was only one way out, but it would mean going through the heart of the Empire's forces. He couldn't afford to lose another soldier. He couldn't afford to fail. "Follow me," Alex shouted, sprinting toward the nearest maintenance hatch. It wasn't much of an escape, but it was their only option. The team followed his lead, moving fast despite their exhaustion. The blast doors were sealed, but with Sarah's help, they managed to override the system, opening a narrow path to the underground tunnels. As they slipped into the tunnels below the Empire's stronghold, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of the situation. They had survived. For now. But this was only the beginning. The Empire had thrown everything it had at them, and they had only just begun to fight back. But as they disappeared into the depths of the tunnels, Alex Rains knew that the next battle would be even harder. The Empire would stop at nothing to crush them, and Earth's survival was still hanging by a thread. The real fight had just begun. The tunnels beneath the Empire's stronghold were dimly lit and narrow, a far cry from the towering metallic structure above. Alex Rains led his team through the winding passageways, their footsteps echoing off the cold concrete walls. His mind raced as he tried to process everything that had happened, how the Empire had nearly taken Earth, how they had fought back, how close they had come to losing it all. But this escape, this moment, was only temporary. They were alive, but at what cost? "Where to, Alex?" Sarah's voice broke the silence as she fell in beside him. She had taken the rear for most of the retreat, making sure the team wasn't ambushed on their way out. But now she was with him, quietly assessing their next move. Alex wiped the sweat from his brow and glanced at the map they had downloaded from the control room. The tunnels led deep into the heart of the Empire's underground base, but they weren't their final destination. No, they had one objective left, and Alex wasn't about to let the Empire's forces catch up with them. If they were to survive, they had to destroy the Empire's communication relay before reinforcements could arrive. If the Empire could still send messages to their fleet above, Earth would be doomed. This mission wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about preventing the Empire from launching a second assault. "We need to hit the comms relay," Alex said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "We can't afford to leave them a way to call in reinforcements. Once that's down, we can regroup and come up with a new plan." The team nodded in agreement, even as the weight of their situation pressed down on them. They had fought a losing battle against the Empire's soldiers, but now they had a chance to even the odds. The comms relay was heavily guarded, but if they could take it out, the Empire's forces wouldn't be able to coordinate, and without that coordination, they might have a fighting chance. As they moved deeper into the labyrinth of tunnels, the air grew colder. It felt like they were walking into the heart of an animal's den, a place where danger lurked around every corner. Alex led the way, his instincts honed from years of combat. He moved cautiously, keeping his rifle at the ready, as Sarah and the others followed closely behind. The tunnels seemed to stretch on forever, each turn leading them deeper into enemy territory. The only sounds were their footfalls and the occasional crackling of their comms units. "You feeling all right, Alex?" Sarah asked, her voice soft, though the concern in her tone was clear. She could see the exhaustion on his face, the weight of command pressing down on him. "I'm fine," he replied, though the words felt hollow. His body ached, and his mind was filled with the knowledge of just how far Earth was from being safe. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. If they didn't stop the relay, Earth would never be free from the Empire's grasp. He had to keep going. For the team. For humanity. Suddenly, the quiet of the tunnels was broken by the faint hum of machinery. Alex froze, his hand raised to stop the team. The sound was coming from up ahead, a faint noise, almost like a low-frequency hum, but unmistakable. They weren't alone. The Empire's forces were close. "Stay quiet," Alex ordered. "We're not alone." The team crouched behind the nearest cover, weapons ready. The hum grew louder as a group of Imperial soldiers rounded a corner ahead of them. They were armed and alert, clearly on patrol. Alex held his breath, watching as the soldiers passed by, unaware of the humans in the shadows. It was a tight call. Alex motioned for the team to follow, and they continued on their path, silently moving deeper into the enemy base. As they neared their objective, the hum of the machinery grew more intense. They were close now. The comms relay was just ahead, but so was the Empire's security. The passageway opened into a large chamber, its walls lined with high-tech equipment and control panels. In the center stood the comms relay, a massive, glowing structure that pulsed with energy. "Just like we planned," Sarah whispered. "Let's take it down." But as they moved into position, something shifted in the air. The hairs on the back of Alex's neck stood up. He felt it before he saw it. The unmistakable sound of boots on the move. The Empire had anticipated their move. A voice crackled over the comms. "Sir, we've detected intruders. Prepare for immediate reinforcements." Alex's blood ran cold. Reinforcements. They were already fighting for their lives, and now they were about to face a full-on assault from the Empire. This was the moment of truth. They either finished the mission, or they wouldn't walk out of these tunnels alive. "Get to the relay now," Alex barked. Without wasting another second, the team surged forward. But no sooner had they reached the control panels than a massive blast shook the room. The doors on the far side of the chamber exploded open, and more Imperial soldiers flooded in. Their blasters lit up the dark room with bursts of deadly energy. "Cover the relay," Alex ordered, even as he dove for cover behind a stack of equipment. The Empire's forces were relentless, but they couldn't afford to retreat. The relay had to be disabled, or the Empire's communication network would stay intact, and Earth's final chance would be lost. The battle erupted in full force. Alex's team returned fire with precision, but the Empire's soldiers were well trained, and the odds were quickly stacking up against them. For every soldier Alex's team took down, 2 more appeared in their place. The firefight intensified, the sound of energy blasts deafening. "Sarah, you're the tech expert. Get to the relay's main panel now," Alex shouted above the chaos. She didn't hesitate. With no more time to waste, Sarah dashed toward the control panel in the center of the room, ducking and weaving to avoid the incoming fire. Her hands flew over the system, activating override protocols and planting explosives on the relay's core. If she could just buy them a few more seconds, the mission would be complete. But as she worked, the doors to the chamber opened once again. This time, the Empire wasn't holding back. It was clear that this was their final stand. The enemy's leader, a towering figure in black armor, stepped into the room, flanked by elite soldiers. "You cannot win," the Empire's general said, his voice cold and void of emotion. "Earth will fall, as all other deathworlds have. Your resistance is futile." But Alex wasn't going to let them win. Not today. Not ever. "Sarah, now," he shouted. With a final push, Sarah detonated the explosives, and the room was consumed by an explosion that rocked the entire base. The comms relay erupted in a violent burst of light, sending shockwaves through the underground tunnels. For a brief, exhilarating moment, Alex and his team were thrown to the ground by the force of the blast. They had done it. The relay was down. The Empire's communication network was shattered. But the fight wasn't over. The Empire would send reinforcements, and Earth's last defenders had just taken their first real victory. The Empire might have underestimated them before, but now they knew. Humanity would never back down. The battle had only just begun. The aftermath of the explosion was a haze of smoke and dust. The rumbling of the blast echoed in Alex's ears as he struggled to regain his bearings. His body ached, his chest tight from the impact, but there was no time to rest. Not now. The mission was far from over. "Move, move," Alex shouted, forcing himself to his feet and scanning the chamber. The comms relay was a smoldering heap of twisted metal, its pulsing glow now extinguished. The Empire's lifeline to its fleet had been severed. But the battle wasn't won yet. "Everyone, fall back. Now," Alex commanded, his voice hoarse but resolute. His team was already moving, ducking low and rushing for the exit, but the sounds of boots and heavy footsteps were closing in fast. The Empire's elite soldiers were on their way. Sarah, her face smeared with dirt and sweat, sprinted past him, firing her weapon in quick bursts to clear a path. Her breath came in sharp gasps, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. The escape route was still ahead, but it was narrow, and with the blast, it was no longer a safe passage. The Empire's forces would know exactly where to chase them. Alex gestured to the others, signaling for a defensive position as they approached the tunnel exit. They had to hold the line for just a little longer. Their chances of survival depended on it. The first of the Imperial soldiers appeared at the far end of the hallway, their black armor gleaming in the flickering light. There were too many of them. They were surrounded. Alex's heart pounded as he pulled the trigger, sending another soldier collapsing to the ground. The blast rang out, but the sound of his team's gunfire barely drowned out the noise of their enemies closing in. "Alex," Sarah yelled over the comms. We can't hold them much longer. We need to get out now. I know, Alex snapped. We make our stand here. You go. I'll cover you. She hesitated, her eyes filled with doubt. No, Alex. We stay together. No time for debate. Alex barked. This is it. You and the others get to the surface. I'll buy you time. Sarah shook her head, but she knew he was right. There was no other choice. If they all stayed together, they wouldn't make it. Alex was right. He would give them a chance, and they would take it. The team began to move quickly, darting toward the exit, while Alex and a handful of his soldiers stayed behind to lay down cover fire. The Empire was relentless, but they were skilled. They had fought against the best the Empire had to offer, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. As the team moved into the tunnel, Sarah paused only for a moment to look back. Alex's face was set, his expression hard with determination. She didn't want to leave him behind, but he had made his choice, and she couldn't dishonor that by hesitating. With one final glance, she turned and disappeared into the darkness, leading the others toward the surface. Alex's eyes never left the tunnel entrance. The enemy was closing in fast. He had to hold them off long enough for his team to get away. The ground beneath him shook again, this time from the weight of the incoming Imperial forces. The tunnel was filling with the sounds of shuffling boots and clanking armor. Alex's squadron was down to just a few men, but they were all battle-hardened. They had fought for Earth. They had bled for Earth. And they would die for Earth if it came to that. The first wave of soldiers rounded the corner, and the battle began in earnest. Energy blasts lit up the dark passage, the air crackling with the hum of weapons charging. Alex fired at the nearest soldier, his shot connecting with the target, but there was no time to celebrate. The enemy was relentless, and they kept coming. Alex and his team fought with every ounce of strength they had left. They didn't back down, even as the numbers grew. The odds were insurmountable, but they didn't care. They were Earth's last hope, and they would make sure it wasn't extinguished today. One of the soldiers, a tall, armored figure, moved forward, using his squad as a shield. Alex recognized the insignia on his uniform. This was no ordinary grunt. This was an officer, a leader of the Empire's forces, and the officer had a plan. He wasn't going to allow Alex and his team to survive, not if he had anything to say about it. The officer's eyes locked with Alex's, a flicker of recognition in the depths of his cold, merciless gaze. There was no more time for hesitation. Alex's heart pounded as he lifted his rifle and aimed at the officer. But the moment he squeezed the trigger, the world exploded around him. An explosion rang out from above, shaking the entire tunnel system to its core. The shockwave sent Alex flying backward, slamming into the wall with a deafening crack. His vision blurred, and the pain was almost unbearable. He could hear the screams of his soldiers, but his body was too numb to react. The officer's face twisted in a grin as his soldiers advanced, taking advantage of the chaos. Alex forced himself to stand, his body screaming in protest, but he wasn't about to give up. He couldn't. Earth needed him. Earth needed them all. Retreat, the officer yelled to his soldiers. Don't let them escape. But it was too late. Another blast, this one from outside the tunnels, hit the surface with devastating force. The Empire's forces staggered. The ground shook with such intensity that even the Empire's elite soldiers faltered. The shockwave from the explosion seemed to come from all directions, reverberating off the walls of the tunnel. The officer's smug smile faltered as the ground beneath them cracked and shifted. The Empire was crumbling, just like their hold on Earth. Get down. Alex screamed at his team. He didn't wait for a reply. The tunnels were collapsing around them. They had no time to worry about the Empire's forces anymore. The blast had caused irreparable damage to the tunnel system, and the tunnel itself was disintegrating. They had to get out. Now. The walls shook violently as another blast tore through the Empire's stronghold, and the entire complex began to collapse. Alex and his team didn't waste another second. They sprinted toward the exit, the last path leading to the surface. As they burst through the final set of doors, Alex could hear the muffled thuds of the Empire's forces being swallowed by the destruction. The battle had changed. The Empire's grip was slipping. And as they finally stepped into the daylight, Alex realized something that filled him with hope, even in the darkest of moments. Earth was still alive. The fight wasn't over, but they had won a significant victory. For the first time in what felt like forever, Alex allowed himself a breath. They had survived. They had fought back, and the war was far from over.